Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gray Doolin. I'm a desire and sexuality coach. I help women name, acknowledge, and explore their desires using the embodied manifestation method. It is as sexy as it sounds. Just want to be clear about that right up front. It is time for another Q&A Thursday. I'm coming live from rainy Marshall, Minnesota, here in my basement digs. Fun fact is that in my travels this fall, this is the second basement setup that I've had. I don't know. Is it like badger leg or like a thing happening here? It's a theme. Anyway, today's question I love so much, and it is: how do you or I reconcile two desires, major desires that seem to be oppositional in nature? They seem to be opposed. They are in conflict with one another. So when the person submitted the question, I wrote back and asked for an example because I could, come up with my own, but I also wanted to hear sort of like a specific one that might be coming up in their life. And so the example that they gave was, a strong desire for kind of like a hermit life, some like silence and solitude and rest and like all that comes with that. And then this like real desire to also be of service to the world, right? And so those two things seem in opposition to one another. I want to go out into the woods and be alone, but I also like want to help people heal and be of service. And so how do I reconcile those two desires together? So the first thing that I would bring to that is, get curious about the opposition and the story that we have that those two things, those two desires are actually opposed, right? Is that true? Is this life of quiet and solitude in opposition to one of being of service? I don't know the answer to that, but that is, the first place that I would start, is just, bring some curiosity to that story that we have, that I can only have one of these. I can't have all that I want. I can either be a hermit in the woods or I can be of service. That seems like to me a false dichotomy, right? And so I think just beginning to unpack the stories that we have about why we are putting these two things in opposition. I mean, we live in a world of polarities, right? We have the feminine, masculine, we have scarcity, abundance, we have, fear, love, whatever you want to put on these polarities. And so, these opposition aspects or polar opposites, even with the planets, the oppositions are all about integration. And so how can we take each of these energies and integrate them and come more into balance? And so I think unpacking that story about, they can't exist together, begins to even break that down from the very beginning. So how do we integrate those two desires together? How can we see them as in service of one another rather than being opposed? And that leads to the second thing that I would bring up, which is to get curious about what those desires are, right? What needs are they meeting? What is being asked for there? This need for solitude and quiet, that sounds just like a person who is maybe in deep need of rest and who is overwhelmed and is tired of all the life stimulation and caring for others, and someone just in need of deep nourishment and self-care, in the deep way, not in the I go get a massage kind of way, but in a deep restoration kind of way. So that is potentially the need that's underlying that desire, right? And so we're holding that in this camp, and then we're looking at the other one, which is to be of service. And I would put that in kind of if we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that one is an upper level need. And so again, we're putting these in opposition to one another, but they aren't. They're on the same spectrum. They are desires that exist within us, not in opposition. One sounds like a deeper kind of nervous system rest need, and one is a higher level, I want to be of service. This helps me make meaning in my life. I love to help others. Those two things, again, not in opposition. They're just they're hitting on different needs that you might have. And so an example from my own life, and it's very similar to this, is that to these exact two oppositions that we're talking about, is that I have known for a long time that my purpose here on this earth is to help heal a lot of people and to reach a lot of folks and to be this big, to have big impact. But for years, my body and everything else was just asking for healing. I had deep healing that needed to happen. I wanted to sleep for 4 years and process that trauma out of my body. But I would tell you that like those things feel opposed because I didn't listen to my body. I like didn't listen to the strongest desire, which was to take time out, which was to address this healing, which was to attend to myself. And I like could almost guarantee that if I had said yes to that desire fully embodied that, fully said yes to it, that it probably would have like sped up or maybe like granted access then to be of service in this like higher level need a lot more quickly than it actually did. But like I love to fucking struggle. Like who doesn't? You know? So I did it the hard way, which was to not listen to this one desire, which was like give myself that silence, like give myself that solitude, give myself the healing I needed. And I just like kept like, I'm just gonna like buy more courses around entrepreneurship, I'm just gonna like keep launching these new things. And I like couldn't ever figure out why it wasn't like taking off, or like why I was burnt out or so exhausted. And it was like, dude, again, these desires, they like, get to exist with one another, but like maybe one needs to be addressed before the other. And so yeah, again, the integration of them. Can one be in service of the other? That's why I think the third point that I bring up then is to like check in with the body. Like if you let your body lead, like if you got in quiet conversation with your body about these two desires, about the two desires that you feel are in opposition with one another, like which one would it choose? Like to be done first, you know? Again, like these desires in service of one another, one being sort of a vehicle to the other. Like listen to your body. Like, what does it tell you about them? And I think a way that we can really get derailed in this part is that, like, is where fear comes in. And that's what I was talking about at the beginning, is that, like, I can only have one of these. Like, that's just some bullshit fear, just, like, straight up. And I think that, like, oftentimes you think, well, if I give in fully to this one desire, if I give in fully to this silence, if I give in fully to the solitude, if I give myself permission to move to a, like, rural lake by myself and kind of, like, burn all of my community down around me and, like, start anew, that I, like, won't be okay on the other side of that, or, like, I'm going to be in that forever. Like, if I make that choice, like, that's it. Like, I will just be a hermit in the woods forever, and I can't be of service to other people. Like, again, it's just not true. I mean, it's true if you think it's true, but, like, it's, like, not capital T truth. What could open up, or what might happen if you can relax into giving yourself the desire, like, giving yourself that solitude, giving yourself whatever desire seems in opposition to another, I guarantee a relaxing or a surrender into that then, like, opens up this, like, beautiful, kind of like a channel, like a pathway into these other things that you're desiring, because you said yes to this thing that your body, these like sort of core needs that are being asked for. It's this like really beautiful unfolding when we can surrender into that, to just say, okay, I trust that this desire, that like this silence or solitude that is asking for in this moment is going to lead me to exactly where I need to be. And like maybe that is into something else. And maybe that is then creating a spaciousness to show up in service in the way that you want to. But it really, like, that's following our desires requires this sense of, like, trust and surrender by saying yes, that it's going to take us exactly where we need to be. So, to summarize, I would get curious about this story that we have that these two needs are opposed at all, because I don't think that that's true. I would get curious about the desires and where they're coming from. What needs, like what sort of underneath this desire, like what needs are asking to be met? And then I would check in with the body and just ask it, like what needs to come first? Like which is the pathway to the other? And then, like I said, that element of saying yes to that, or saying I hear you, like requires this sense of trust and surrender, and that like all of them can exist. Like that's the saying yes to one is not saying no to another. Although if you look at my feed, I do have a post that says saying yes to a desire is a no to something else. But that doesn't mean it's a no to this other desire that we have. Just in this moment, if you're going to choose silence and solitude, it's like a not right now, perhaps, to this other one. But can you give yourself fully that desire so you can live into it? Your body has what it wants from that, and then it gets to like lead into this next thing. That's that process. this like whole idea of like we get to have it all, like that doesn't come from this like graspy like, well, I'm gonna like 3/4 take this one desire and then I'm gonna like fourth do this one because I'm afraid that if I fully like give into this one I'm gonna lose this one completely. That's not the energy I'm talking about at all. You get to have it all fully, and let yourself have it fully. The ways that we cling and grasp, like that's our own fear shit. That's our fear around that. So can you integrate these two desires? Can you see them not in opposition, but in service of one another? And which one are you going to indulge first? Because one, even in this example, seems to be sort of like screaming more loudly than the other. So that's what I have for you today. Please keep submitting your questions. I love them. There are a couple of amazing ones on the docket upcoming as well. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you think about this. If you are, I don't know, dealing with two desires that feel in opposition right now, or kind of like caught between a couple of things, I don't know, reach out, let me know. I'd love to talk about this stuff with you all. So I love you so much. Talk soon.